was, if I'm ever not in love with you, I won't just sit there and be in a pathetic place with you.
The air outside the courthouse was thick with tension, an almost electric silence that hovered over Flagstaff like a storm waiting to break. The crowd of cameras, fans, and reporters clustered near the marble steps, whispering in disbelief. They weren't just here for any case. They were here for the Browns. Once the proud faces of plural love and polygamist resilience, now the fractured family stood under the harsh light of judgment, their secrets bleeding into the public eye. Inside, the courtroom was a battlefield without bullets. Every glance was a strike, every sigh a tremor. The judge's gavel had fallen moments earlier, echoing through the chamber like thunder. And with that single motion, Robyn Brown's world had crumbled. Her trembling hands clutched the edge of the table, knuckles whitening as she tried to process what she had just heard. Her lips parted, but no sound escaped. Only the silent terror of a woman watching her carefully built life collapse piece by piece. The ruling was final. The assets she once claimed as hers, portions of the Coyote Pass land, the properties she guarded so fiercely, even the funds she'd quietly diverted, were now stripped away. Ownership had shifted. The judge's voice had been clear. All properties acquired jointly shall revert to the collective names of Meri Brown and Janelle Brown. In that instant, Robyn's chest tightened. It wasn't just money or land. It was power, identity, survival. Everything she'd fought to hold together in the wreckage of Cody's fading empire had been ripped from her. Across the room, Meri and Janelle sat side by side, two women who had once been silent shadows in Cody's orbit, now steady and unflinching. Meri's expression was unreadable, calm but fierce. Janelle's eyes glistened with quiet victory. For years, they had endured humiliation, isolation, and manipulation. Now, as the legal tide finally turned, it felt like the universe had handed them back a piece of their dignity. Cody Brown sat one row behind Robyn, shoulders stiff, jaw locked. The once commanding patriarch of 4 wives and 18 children was a ghost of his former self. The courtroom lights carved hard lines into his face, and for the first time, the weight of his own downfall seemed to dawn on him. He leaned forward, whispering sharply into Robyn's ear, but she didn't respond. Her eyes were glassy, distant, focused on the floor where everything she believed she controlled had slipped through her fingers. Outside, the news had already broken. Robyn Brown evicted. Meri and Janelle win Coyote Pass battle, screamed the online headlines. Social media erupted. Fans, critics, and former supporters flooding comment sections with disbelief and satisfaction. For years, the narrative had painted Robyn as the favored wife, the manipulator who had quietly dismantled the plural family from within. Now the world was watching her fall. At the courthouse steps, TLC cameras tried to capture reactions, but Meri waved them off. She wasn't here to perform anymore. For the first time in years, she wanted privacy. Not silence, but peace. "We just wanted what was fair," she said softly to a reporter, her voice trembling not from fear but from release. This was never about revenge. It was about respect. Behind her, Janelle stepped forward, her tone steady but heavy with emotion. "We built this life together, and we deserve to keep what we worked for. We're not the villains people made us out to be." The contrast was brutal. While Meri and Janelle walked toward their car surrounded by quiet strength, Robyn stumbled out of the courthouse side door, shielding her face from the flash of cameras. Cody trailed behind, furious and defeated. He muttered under his breath, waving off the questions hurled at him. "This isn't over," he snapped, his voice breaking under the pressure. "They'll regret this." But deep down, even Cody knew it was over. The empire he built on faith, love, and control had turned to sand. That night, the Brown family group chat, once a place of family coordination, was a war zone. Messages flew back and forth. Some of the kids were angry, others silent. Aurora, Robyn's daughter, sent a crying emoji and nothing more. Christine, watching from Utah, didn't respond publicly, but quietly shared a supportive post on Instagram. Karma has its own timing. In Robyn's home, chaos brewed. The eviction notice had already arrived, stamped and coldly worded. Her mortgage payments, tied to accounts under Cody's management, were frozen pending investigation. The reality was grim. The home she'd believed was her sanctuary was no longer legally hers. She sank to the floor of her living room, surrounded by boxes that suddenly felt like coffins for a dream. The walls seemed to close in, the same walls where she had once decorated for family holidays, where laughter used to echo before suspicion and resentment replaced it. Cody paced near the fireplace, his anger now directed at the system, at Meri and Janelle, at everyone but himself. "How could they do this to us?" he barked. "After everything we gave them, after everything I built?" Robyn looked up at him with tear-streaked cheeks, voice breaking. "No, Cody, it's not us anymore. It's them and me." That silence that followed was deafening. Even he couldn't argue with that truth. Days passed, and the news cycle devoured every moment of Robyn's unraveling life. Paparazzi camped outside her driveway. Former friends distanced themselves. The TLC crew, once ever present, began to pull away too. Producers whispered about how to spin the situation, whether to portray Robyn as a victim or the architect of her own misery. Meanwhile, Meri and Janelle held their first joint press meeting. It wasn't flashy. There were no tears, no dramatic sound bites, just two women standing on solid ground. "We didn't win today," Janelle said calmly. "We reclaimed what was already ours." Fans flooded the internet with support. For the first time in years, comments under Meri's posts were filled with love instead of mockery. "Finally, justice," one fan wrote. "You deserve happiness." Another commented, "This is the Meri we always knew was strong." Back in her empty home, Robyn scrolled through the comments with trembling hands. Every word cut deeper. Once adored, she was now portrayed as greedy and deceitful. Even her most loyal supporters were questioning her intentions. She wanted to fight back, to speak out, but Cody refused. "We'll handle this privately," he told her sternly. "We don't feed the wolves." But the wolves were already eating. Behind the scenes, Meri and Janelle met with their attorneys again. The victory was theirs, but the war wasn't fully over. Cody's lawyers were threatening an appeal, though everyone knew it was an empty gesture. He didn't have the money or the leverage. Still, Meri worried. "Do you think they'll come after us again?" she asked quietly as they sat in a dim cafe after the meeting. Janelle shook her head. "They can't. The paperwork's clean." For once, Cody's arrogance worked in our favor. They shared a laugh, small but genuine. It had been years since they'd laughed together like that. The bond that once broke under Cody's favoritism was slowly stitching itself back together, piece by piece. Janelle looked out the window toward the setting sun. "It feels strange, doesn't it? Winning after so long." Meri nodded, her eyes distant. "It's not about winning. It's about closure." Back in Flagstaff, Cody's fury only grew. The cameras caught him storming out of a gas station, yelling into his phone. "They can't do this. They can't just take everything." His words made tabloid headlines within hours. But the truth was, Cody's influence had evaporated. TLC's executives were already reconsidering the next season. The drama had turned too dark, too real. Behind closed doors, producers discussed pivoting the show, focusing instead on Meri and Janelle's journey of independence. When Cody found out, he slammed the kitchen counter so hard that the sound echoed through the empty house. "They're turning my story into theirs," he shouted. Robyn stood in the doorway, silent. For the first time, she didn't defend him. Late that night, Robyn sat on the floor of her bedroom surrounded by unopened mail and unpaid bills. The lights flickered, a storm outside shaking the windows. Her reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, tired, hollow, broken. She whispered to herself, "Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they weren't the enemies." It was the kind of admission that never made it onto television, never appeared in confessionals. But in that quiet, rain-filled night, Robyn faced the truth she had avoided for years. Love built on control isn't love at all. In another city, Meri sat by her fireplace, scrolling through her messages. Among the congratulations and praise, one message stood out. A private text from Christine. "Proud of you. You finally got your voice back." Meri smiled faintly, tears gathering in her eyes. She replied simply, "Thank you. I think we all did." By the week's end, eviction trucks lined up outside Robyn's property. Neighbors peeked through curtains as movers carried out furniture, boxes, memories. Cody wasn't there. He'd driven off earlier that morning, destination unknown. The rumor was he'd gone to see one of his older kids, desperate for sympathy. Robyn stood alone on the porch, arms wrapped around herself against the cold. The cameras had come again, but this time no one tried to hide. She faced them, weary and stripped of pride. "Do you want a statement?" a reporter asked gently. Robyn shook her head, eyes glistening. "No," she whispered. "I think the story tells itself." The reporter nodded silently, lowering his mic. The wind carried her words away like dust. Pieces of a fallen kingdom disappearing into the night. Dust. Pieces of a fallen kingdom disappearing into the night. The days following Robyn's eviction were a slow-motion collapse. a tragedy unfolding in real time. The internet couldn't look away, fans couldn't stop talking, and the Brown family itself seemed paralyzed between denial and disbelief. For years, Robyn Brown had been portrayed as the calm, emotional glue holding the family together, but now that image was shattered. She was no longer the careful, composed woman behind the tears. She was the broken center of a crumbling story, her house emptied, her reputation splintered, and her husband's rage spiraling dangerously out of control. The scene outside Robyn's now empty home became a media circus. Photographers captured every detail, the for sale sign planted in the yard, the moving trucks rumbling away, even the faint shadow of Robyn herself watching from behind tinted car windows. The headlines were merciless. Robyn Brown's downfall. Kody Brown loses everything. Sister wives' empire in ruins. It was more than just a scandal. It was poetic justice to many who had watched years of favoritism and manipulation unfold. But inside that story was a woman who, for the first time, had no one left to lean on. Kody's anger had become volcanic. He stormed into what was left of his office, stacks of unpaid bills and legal notices littering the desk. "They think they can just erase me," he shouted, slamming his hand against the wall. "This family wouldn't even exist without me." Robyn flinched at the sound, clutching a crumpled eviction notice in her trembling hands. "Kody, please." Screaming won't change anything. "We need to figure out where we're going to live." But Kody wasn't listening. His world had always revolved around control, controlling the narrative, the finances, the women. And now that control was gone. The man who once stood in front of TLC cameras declaring himself a leader of love now looked like a stranger consumed by ego and fear. "We're not staying here," Robyn said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't face the neighbors anymore." "Then where?" Kody snapped. "You think Meri or Janelle would help us now?" "They're too busy celebrating." Robyn's tears returned. "I'm not asking them for help," she said. "I'm asking you to help me." For a moment, Kody went silent. His shoulders slumped. He had no answer. Meanwhile, across town, Meri and Janelle were finally breathing easier. Their meeting with the lawyers had gone smoothly. The documents were finalized, the properties secured, and the dust beginning to settle. For the first time in years, they weren't afraid of what came next. Meri stood in her new office, the one she'd set up to manage her bed and breakfast business, Lizzie's Heritage Inn. The sunlight streamed in through the window, touching the framed photo of her daughter Mariah on the desk. Everything felt lighter, calmer. She picked up her phone, scrolling through her messages. Fans had been flooding her inbox with words of support, encouragement, and admiration. "You're stronger than you think," one message read. "You survived Kody's control. You're free now." Freedom, that word hit differently now. Janelle walked in with 2 cups of coffee. "You look like you finally slept," she teased, placing 1 cup on Meri's desk. "I did," Meri replied, smiling faintly. "For the first time in a long time." The 2 women shared a quiet laugh. The old days, the jealousy, the cold shoulders, the forced smiles, all felt like another lifetime. They weren't just ex-sister wives anymore. They were survivors of the same storm. "I still can't believe it's over," Janelle murmured, taking a sip of coffee. "After everything, it feels strange to win." Meri looked out the window. "It's not about winning, Janelle. It's about getting back what was stolen from us. Our peace, our respect, our names." And for the first time, both women knew. They weren't going to lose either of those again. Kody, however, wasn't done fighting. The morning after the court ruling, he began calling lawyers across Arizona, desperate for someone, anyone, who would take his case. But one by one, they turned him down. The ruling was airtight, the evidence overwhelming, and his finances too unstable to launch another legal battle. Out of frustration, Kody recorded a video message for his online supporters, a rambling, angry rant that was supposed to set the record straight. "People think they know everything," he shouted into his phone camera, his eyes wild. "They think Meri and Janelle are innocent, but they manipulated the system. They turned everyone against me." But within minutes of uploading it, the backlash was brutal. Fans flooded his comments, calling him delusional, manipulative, and out of touch. "Own your mistakes, Kody," one comment read. "You did this to yourself," said another. By nightfall, the video was deleted, but not before screenshots spread across every gossip site in America. Robyn watched it all unfold from her sister's small guest house where she'd been staying temporarily. She hadn't left the house in days, not since the eviction. Her eyes were red from crying, her voice hoarse from sleepless nights. The TLC producers had reached out several times, begging for an exclusive interview. "Tell your side," they pleaded. But Robyn refused. "There's no side," she muttered to herself. "There's just the end." Still, she couldn't stop replaying the courtroom in her head. The judge's tone, Meri's composure, Janelle's quiet strength. Every memory felt like a punishment. She remembered the early days, when she was the new wife, the one who brought romance back into Cody's life. The fans adored her then. She was the savior, the balance. But slowly, the admiration turned into resentment, and love turned into loyalty tested by guilt. Now she was the villain in a story she didn't think she'd written. In a surprising twist, TLC executives made a public announcement. The next season of Sister Wives will focus on the women's individual journeys post-divorce and the rebuilding of their lives. Cody's name was barely mentioned. Robyn's wasn't mentioned at all. The shift sent shockwaves through the fan base. Meri and Janelle, once sidelined, were now the future faces of the franchise. Robyn watched the news in stunned silence, clutching the remote until her knuckles turned white. "They're cutting us out," she whispered. Cody's face hardened. "They're rewriting history," he growled. "No," Robyn said softly, eyes glistening. "They're just telling the truth." That statement hit Cody like a slap. He turned away, furious, but deep down he knew she was right. While the world moved forward, Cody began to spiral. His calls went unanswered, his bank account dwindled, and his relationships with his older children became distant echoes. One night, he sat in his car outside Janelle's new property, staring at the glowing windows from a distance. Inside, Janelle was laughing with her kids, with friends, with life again. Cody's chest tightened. He wanted to storm up to the door, to remind her of everything he'd done for them, but instead he drove away in silence. The truth was too painful to face. Cody Brown, once the patriarch of a sprawling family, was now a man without a home, without a wife who could stand beside him, and without a future that looked anything like what he'd imagined. As Robyn's eviction story gained traction online, sympathy slowly began to trickle in. Some fans said she didn't deserve this, that no one did. But even the kind words felt hollow. She started packing what little she had left. Old photo albums, her children's drawings, a few family keepsakes. Every object felt heavy with memories. She came across a picture of all four wives together, smiling in a family photo taken years ago. For a moment, she just stared. She remembered the laughter, the awkwardness, the illusion of unity. But now, all she could see were cracks that had been there all along. Her phone buzzed. A message from Meri. "Robyn, I know things are hard right now, but I want you to know we never wanted this to destroy you. We just wanted what was right." Robyn stared at the message for a long time, then typed a reply and deleted it 3 times before finally sending, "Maybe right and fair aren't the same thing." Meri never responded. Days later, Robyn visited Coyote Pass one last time. The land was quiet, vast, and untouched, but it didn't feel like hers anymore. She walked slowly along the dirt road, the wind whipping her hair as the setting sun cast long shadows. In her mind, she heard Cody's old promises. "This land will be our legacy." But the legacy was gone. Standing there, she realized something she had never admitted before. She had fought so hard to hold on to something that was never truly hers to begin with. Tears fell freely as she whispered into the empty air, "I should have let go when I still had something left." Meanwhile, Meri and Janelle's lives began to rebuild in unexpected ways. Their friendship deepened, their businesses grew, and fans rallied around their strength. TLC even offered them a spin-off series titled Sister Wives Reclaimed. They accepted, but with one condition. No fake storylines, Meri insisted. No manipulation, just truth. The producers agreed. When the trailer dropped, it broke records online. Clips of Meri smiling, Janelle hiking with her sons, and Christine visiting from Utah flooded the internet. Fans called it the rebirth of Sister Wives. Cody, sitting alone in a rented apartment, watched the trailer in silence. His reflection in the TV screen looked older, angrier, emptier. He picked up his phone, scrolling through the headlines. Every article seemed to erase him a little more. In that moment, the reality hit. He wasn't the center of the story anymore. He was the cautionary tale. Robyn, too, saw the trailer. He was the cautionary tale. Robyn, too, saw the trailer. The house that once echoed with Robyn's laughter now stood empty and cold. The wind swept through the broken blinds, carrying the sound of a life that had been dismantled piece by piece. For the first time in years, there were no cameras, no lights, and no TLC crew waiting to capture another chaotic scene. Robyn sat on the floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes filled with what little she had left. Her phone had stopped ringing days ago. Even Cody wasn't answering. It was as if the world had collectively decided to erase her existence. Outside, reporters waited near the curb, whispering about her eviction notice and the public meltdown that had followed the court's final decision. Fans who once defended her now filled online forums with shock and anger. "She played the victim until she couldn't anymore," one post read. Another said, "This is karma for what she did to the other wives." Robyn had never thought she'd become the villain in the story she helped write, but now every headline painted her as one. Meanwhile, in a cozy kitchen across town, Meri and Janelle sat with cups of coffee, the weight of their victory settling in. The court had not only ruled in their favor, but they now had control over the Coyote Pass assets, the land that had been a source of endless fights and false promises. Meri looked out the window, her voice calm but heavy with emotion. "We lost years of peace because of that man," she said softly. "But maybe now we can finally start living again." Janelle nodded. Her tone carried strength and quiet satisfaction. "We built that dream together. And Cody sold it out for someone who never respected any of us. This isn't revenge, Meri, it's justice." The two women didn't smile. There was no celebration. Just relief, the kind that comes after years of chaos. Still, a part of them couldn't help but wonder how Cody would take the news. He had been silent since the verdict, retreating into anger and paranoia, blaming everyone but himself. He'd lost the wives who built his empire, the homes that gave him power, and now, the woman he had sacrificed everything for. At a small motel outside Flagstaff, Cody sat on the edge of a bed, staring at an old photo of the family, back when they still called themselves sister wives. The picture was faded, the smiles almost unrecognizable now. His reflection in the mirror showed a man who'd aged 20 years in a few months. His hair was messy, eyes bloodshot, his once fiery confidence replaced by exhaustion. He slammed the photo face down, unable to look at it any longer. How did it all come to this? He muttered under his breath. But deep down he knew. It wasn't the court. It wasn't Meri or Janelle or Christine. It was him. His choices. His arrogance. His belief that he could control everyone and still be loved. Now, with Robyn gone and his reputation shattered, Cody had nothing left to hide behind. Robyn's eviction had made national headlines. The footage of her crying outside her foreclosed home was broadcast across entertainment channels, with paparazzi capturing every tear, every pleading glance. When asked for a comment, she whispered only one thing. "They all left me." Even he did. That clip alone became viral overnight. Viewers who had once pitied her now debated whether she had finally gotten what she deserved. The public sympathy she had manipulated for years had evaporated like smoke. Back in Utah, Christine watched the coverage with quiet disbelief. David Woolley sat beside her, holding her hand. "It's like watching the past eat itself," she said softly. "We all tried to warn her. We all tried to move on, but she just couldn't let go." David gave a gentle nod. "Sometimes letting go is the only way to survive," he said. "You did that, and that's why you're free." Christine smiled faintly. There was no joy in Robyn's downfall, just closure. After all, they had all been broken by the same man, just in different ways. The TLC producers, meanwhile, faced their own crisis. Without Cody and Robyn's chaos, the show had no heartbeat left. Rumors circulated that the network was planning to cancel Sister Wives after one final tell-all episode. A source leaked that Cody had demanded to be paid for his final appearance, but the network refused. They didn't need him anymore. The story had ended, and it wasn't his ending to control. Meri received the call first. TLC wanted her and Janelle to return for one final on-camera reflection. Not to stir drama, but to bring closure. Meri hesitated at first. "Do I really want to relive all that?" she asked Janelle. But Janelle, ever the realist, replied, "Maybe it's not about the past anymore. Maybe it's about showing what survival looks like." Meri agreed, and for the first time, both women walked into a studio not as broken ex-wives, but as victors who had found peace on their own terms. When filming began, the energy was different. There was no Cody pacing, no Robyn crying on cue. Just two women sitting across from a host, speaking truth. "We gave him everything," Meri said into the camera, her tone steady. "Our loyalty, our trust, our years. But you can't rebuild something when the foundation was never honest." Janelle added quietly, "We didn't win because we fought harder. We won because we finally stopped letting him decide our worth." The audience watching from home felt every word. The clip spread across social media, labeled "The Real Ending of Sister Wives." And for once, it wasn't about the drama. It was about liberation. As for Robyn, her life after the court ruling became a blur of quiet days and long nights. She had moved into a small rental house outside town, far from where anyone would recognize her. The lavish furniture was gone, the designer clothes sold. In their place were thrift store blankets and a single old sofa. Some nights she would stare at her phone, hoping Cody would call. But he didn't. Word was he had left Arizona entirely, heading north, perhaps to start over, or maybe to disappear completely. One afternoon, while sorting through papers, Robyn found an old handwritten note from Meri. It was years old, from back when they still believed in sisterhood. The message was simple. One day, the truth will always come out. I just hope we're all strong enough when it does. Robyn pressed the paper to her chest and sobbed. For the first time, she realized this wasn't about money, fame, or property. It was about losing herself in a life she thought would save her. Weeks later, Meri and Janelle stood together at Coyote Pass. The land stretched wide before them, silent but full of history. The court papers had been finalized. It was truly theirs now. Meri looked around, the desert sun casting a warm glow over the hills. "You know," she said softly, "we dreamed of building homes here. Maybe we still can, just in a different way." Janelle smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "Maybe now it's finally our turn." The camera of a small independent crew recorded them from a distance. This